This is Euronews Tonight. Here are your headlines. The battle for Ukraine intensifies. Russia claims it's taken the southern city of Kherson as the Ukrainian army says it's still in battle. Troops continue to mass outside of Kyiv, leaving residents to weigh up whether to stay or go.
What is happening now is the extermination of a whole country right in the middle of Europe.
The warning from one Ukrainian MP and mother as families are separated and children are among the casualties. As shelling ramps up, those staying put head underground, taking shelter from the horrors above. President Macron condemns Vladimir Putin for starting the war in Ukraine and calls for a ceasefire to allow humanitarian aid in.
And here in the Cube, we look at verified videos that show unarmed Ukrainian citizens confronting Russian soldiers.
I'm Helena Humphrey. Good to have you with us. Russia claims its forces have taken the Ukrainian city of Kherson. It would be the first major urban centre to fall since the beginning of the invasion. Russian defence spokesman Igor Konashenkov says its forces are now fully in control of the port city of Kherson and negotiating with city administrators over the functioning of social infrastructure. It is situated to the south. It's seen as an important strategic target for Moscow, but Ukrainian officials dispute Russia's claim and they say that the army is still in control and is still fighting. Meanwhile, Kharkiv and Kyiv are managing to hold off their attackers. That's despite heavy shelling. Kharkiv's regional governor says that at least 21 people have been killed and 112 wounded. That's over the last 24 hours. Now in Kyiv, bridges leading towards the capital have been destroyed by the Ukrainian army to try and slow down the advance of the invading army. As Russian troops push on towards Kyiv, worried residents are seeking safety underground and some train services have been suspended while metro stations shelter families from shelling and gunfire. Hospitals in the capital are also moving patients into basements while bombs continue to fall, and those taking shelter say that the horrors they have witnessed above are keeping them below.
We are scared to leave Kyiv because I saw with my own eyes a civilian bus that was shot. I saw burnt cars. I heard civilian cars with families and children were shot at.
Well, life for most Ukrainians has changed completely in just 7 days. Air raid sirens and missile attacks have become the new norm. Lesia Vasilenko, a Ukrainian MP from the Kholos political party, is still living in Kyiv, and she told me what life has been like since Russia's invasion.
Well, right now I'm on the road, moving from point A to point B, and the situation here is exactly like everywhere for all Ukrainians today, basically fighting our way through this atrocious terrorist war that Russia and Putin particularly are waging against Ukraine.
I saw that you wrote on Twitter today that for the second time in 3 months you had to hand over your 9-month-old baby daughter with your 2 other children. I was very sorry to read that. How are they doing? How do you talk to them about what is happening?
Just as we speak, I received a text message saying, and they got to the place where they're supposed to be. But it's true that the most difficult point in these 7 days was yesterday, when I realized that I don't know the exact date when I will be seeing them. Although I told them that it's going to be sort of like when they go off on holiday without me, or when mommy goes on a business trip. But the big difference is that holidays and business trips, they have a definite date when you come back and when you're reunited. This particular case doesn't have an end date.
And I can see that you're on the road at the moment, that you're moving right now. Do you intend to stay in the Ukrainian capital? I also saw a picture of you online with a rifle. Would you fight?
I would if my life was put in danger. And right now, with all the Russian soldiers roaming the road of Ukrainian villages and towns, being lost, not able to find their way back to their military battalion, what we see is a lot of trespassing. And since they have the typical Ukrainians, this is what they do in towns, in villages, all across the country. So to have a gun in your home is an essential need at this point in time. The same as having water, the same as having bread to eat. So this is why a lot of Ukrainians if not all, are armed in this very difficult time.
French President Emmanuel Macron has spoken to the nation on France's response to the Russia-Ukraine war. Macron strongly condemned Russian President Vladimir Putin for starting the war and called for a ceasefire to allow humanitarian aid to be delivered. Now, he warned that France will face detrimental economic consequences due to the conflict, but will bring in measures including more investment in nuclear energy to absorb the downturn. Macron praised the Ukrainian people for their bravery.
We are behind and there to support Ukraine. We are there to support Ukrainian citizens. In your name, I'd like to address the President Volodymyr Zelensky, the support of France. Today is at the head of his highly courageous people here, the face of bravery.
Well, correspondent Shona Murray says that Emmanuel Macron spoke to the Russian people as well as to the French in his speech.
Yeah, I think it was a fairly straightforward speech. It was resolute support for Ukraine, for the Ukrainian military, which he said he was in awe of, Ukrainian people who will be fleeing and that they're welcome in France and all across Europe. He spoke to the Russian people, said this is not about the great people of Russia, this is about Putin. He talked about the fact that the diplomatic channels remain open for Putin, but he's been trying to engage them since 2017, and obviously that has been fruitless. But he also warned about what he called the profound changes ahead, economic changes, economic shocks, the cost of goods, the cost of petrol, but that France and Europe would diversify and not be as reliant on Russia, as you mentioned at the top, as in the future.
Shona, French President Emmanuel Macron has really been the face of this European response, and in light of what he had to say in that speech, where does the European response go from here?
Well, on Friday, there's an extraordinary Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting with Anthony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, and Liz Truss, the UK Foreign Affairs Minister, which is the first since Brexit. It's actually quite a remarkable thing, other than we're having such important discussions elsewhere. No one's really remarked on the fact that Liz Truss is attending an EU summit. So it's really the diplomatic efforts, but also we've seen really a real shift when it comes to the EU and sanctions, the sanctions against RT, against Sputnik, Russian aircrafts, oligarchs, Belarus as well, and Russian banks. So that's where it's going from here. And also there's the NATO response, which is growing every single day. And Macron mentioned that would certainly France would be involved in stepping that up. But as he mentioned there, the objective is to obtain the end to the war.
In Parliament on Wednesday, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson faced some tough questioning from opposition parties over the names that are not on the British sanctions list. Bill Browder, head of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign, says that many UK-based oligarchs with links to Vladimir Putin are escaping punishment.
Out on the list of sanctions for the UK are some of the biggest oligarchs in the country, which, we all know. There's famous Russian oligarchs. We all know who they are. Some of them have been sanctioned by the United States. Some of them have been sanctioned by the EU, and they're not sanctioned by the UK. And so it's, there's a lot of tough talk. There's a lot of, rhetoric, which sounds great, but when you get into the details, there's a lot of work that Britain needs to do to live up to the tough talk. Abramovich has been trying to transfer assets to other people. Chelsea apparently is supposed to be transferred to some charity or some strange thing. It's kind of logical that you go after the biggest. If you're going to sanction oligarchs, you should go after the biggest oligarch. Why is he exempt? That is, I guess, my question. We could have altered Putin's calculus before he launched the invasion. So Putin is a guy who, when he gets involved in a conflict, he can never back down. He doesn't have a reverse gear. He's absolutely unwilling to show that he made a mistake, admit a mistake. He has to always be the tough guy. And so now that he's escalated, all he can do is continue to escalate. And so at this point, the sanctions are not about negotiating with him, and anyone who's putting them in place with that thought is going to be disappointed. The sanctions at this point are to deplete him of the resources to execute a war. If we freeze the central bank assets, if we were to do a proper swift unplugging of the whole banking system, and if we were to do a proper freezing of the oligarchs' assets, then there wouldn't be any money left for him to execute his war after some period of time. And so that, in my mind, is what's going to stop him. It's not going to be he's not going to stop on his own volition. He's going to stop because gravity will get in the way, and the gravity is lack of money.
Well, talking sanctions, unprecedented sanctions have been placed on the Russian economy.